Welcome to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rowling. Do you believe you are capable of choosing your future? Sometimes it takes just one person to believe in you, or you to believe in yourself. If you find yourself continuing to say, someday I will take better care of myself, only to continue living the same day over and over and over again, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I am your biggest cheerleader, inspiring you to become you on purpose and with intention. Are you ready to create a life you love? I'm excited to share with you some big ideas that you can use today to inspire, impact, and influence your life and everyone in it. The Becoming You show starts now. Hello, my friends. How are you? What is good? Let me know. I always love hearing from you. So many things in my world are awesome. And I will say that navigating the summer with the boys home and the double headers and the work and the travel and the fun has been a bit of a challenge, which I am taking on. But I want to jump right into this conversation today because I have lots to say about it. And I wanted to bring this to you because I think it is so powerful. And that is the conversation around vulnerability, right? So much of this conversation, books, podcasts, courses, what have you, around vulnerability is tied to the notion of being vulnerable with others, right? The notion of being as vulnerable as you can with others. Can you be honest? Can you tell the truth? Can you share your true thoughts and your true feelings with the people in your life, right? That is what we believe to be vulnerable. And it is, but it is so incomplete. Not from an effective standpoint, right? I'm not here to try to sell you on the value of doing that work. Brené Brown has already done that. If you've not looked at her work, read her books, considered the courageous leadership that she efforts and puts forward, the idea that being brave in your position requires vulnerability. So I'll defer that to her. What I'm inviting you to consider is that before you can be vulnerable with others, right, sharing your true thoughts and feelings with them, you've got to get honest with yourself about your thoughts and your feelings. I had a client recently share with me that she couldn't possibly be real with her feelings with her team, right? That she sugarcoats it, like AKA she lies about whatever it is that she is trying to tell them. Because if she said what she really felt, right, if she shared the truth, that it would be mean and that they would quit. Essentially, what she was saying is, I can't be vulnerable and honest with them because I would have major turnover. Okay, anyone else feel that way? We think that we can't actually say what we are thinking because it would blow up our lives in one way or the other. And I shared with my client that the truth is never mean. The truth is always the kindest thing. We just haven't been vulnerable with ourselves to discern our thoughts from our truth. The practice of vulnerability, that inner exploration of our emotions, the space between what we believe to be true and what actually is true, is required if you are going to lead effectively, if you are going to lead authentically, and if you are going to lead honestly, right? I think like so many things in personal development, conceptually, they're awesome, okay? They resonate philosophically, but where we don't make progress, or at least the progress that we could, is because there is a lack of implementation. There is a lack of integration. There's a lack of practice to to this work. And if you think about a lot of the concepts that we talk about here on this podcast and that you probably explore in other books and courses that you take, they lack practice structure. Confidence, growth, fulfillment, energy, right? I think that's why I love frameworks so much. I love taking these topics on and creating models for us to implement, to integrate, and yes, to practice. So for the sake of the podcast, I researched what are some of the best vulnerability practices. And this was so fascinating, and it just kind of brings forward the whole thesis, the whole point of this conversation. This is what I got. Okay, ready? The best practices. This is what it says. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to make sure I don't miss this out. I have my notes here. Okay, so express your feelings with others. Ask for help from others. Share personal stories with others. Give and receive feedback with others. And practice empathy for others. Do you see a theme? These are great, but every single one of them is an external expression. And I don't believe that true vulnerability is possible, nor can it be accessed if it doesn't start within. If our vulnerability lacks discernment, right? Discernment of truth, then it's just the expression of thought. There's a difference. We have to know that difference. Thoughts are our interpretations of what we believe to be true. Thoughts are not facts. Most of us have thoughts that are actually not even ours. We have borrowed them, recycled them, inherited them from other people. And we use other people's thoughts to respond. How can that be truth? How can that be our truth? Right? No wonder we struggle with being vulnerable. Right? No wonder we struggle with authenticity. So we are going to flip this practice inwards today. And when we do that, we will clean up the mean. The mean was because of a thought. And we will be able to access the kind. The kind is the truth, right? If you believe that you can't say what you truly think because it would be mean, consider that isn't actually truth. It is just a thought that you have evidence, that you have bias for, that you continue to believe. In order to find the truth, in order to sit in the vulnerability that this practice is asking you to do, inviting you to do, you have to do the work. You have to do the work at having that discernment, being able to separate the thoughts from what you believe to be true to actually the truth, which is true. Okay? When we clean up the mean, and in that we have access to the kind, we will be able to grow in a way that will completely transform the way that you are currently showing up in every single relationship with your teams, with your significant others, husbands, wives, with yourself. If we do not do this work, we will be consistently putting Band-Aids on the problem. We will never actually have access to the root cause because the problem will continue to reveal itself externally. Until you don't, right? Until you haven't done the work internally, it will continue to show itself. Why? That is the gift that we keep dismissing. We keep giving back to the world, right? We keep rejecting the very thing that is going to allow us the vulnerability that's required to understand who it is that we actually are. Okay, so the practice is going to look like this. Express your feelings with yourself. Understand them. Take responsibility for them. We have to do this. This is foundations number one. Emotional maturity requires 100% ownership of the experiences of you. 100% of the accountability and the responsibility of how you feel. If we don't understand them, if we dismiss them, if we blame them and give other people credit for our feelings, there's no possible way that we can tap into the vulnerability and the authenticity that is required for you to do something great with your life. Your gifts, your genius, what it is that you're wanting to bring into the world requires you. It doesn't require somebody else. It doesn't require what everybody else thinks about you. It requires you. And as you peel the layers, as you peel the onion back to expose the brilliance of you, then you take that and you put that forward in the world. Okay, so express your feelings with yourself. Understand them, take responsibility for them. They're no one else's responsibility. They're your responsibility, okay? I also want you to ask for help from yourself. Remember the practice that was given on Google, right? Ask for help from others. We're flipping this. We're going to ask for help from yourself. It doesn't mean that we live in a silo. It doesn't mean that we're trying to effort this life on our own. It just means that we're going to start with us. Every single negative emotion invites you to connect with you at a deeper level. I used to get really frustrated when I was frustrated. I used to get really overwhelmed when I was overwhelmed. I used to get very upset that I was upset. And now I see all of those emotions as the gift. So much so that I embrace and I love what most people would call negative emotions more than I even love and embrace positive ones. Why? Because there's so much growth for me on the other side. When I'm happy and joyful, I'm not being like, I wonder what that's all about. I wonder why I'm so happy today. I wonder why I'm so joyful today, right? We're not doing that. But we reject and get upset with ourselves when we're upset and we miss the gift. We miss the gift. We miss the opportunity to sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that you need? Every single emotion that you want to blame on other people, right, that you don't want to take credit for, is that very emotion that will honor you because it's inviting you to explore what has been unmet to date. And if we don't take that as a gift, if we don't take that as the opportunity, guess what? It will repeat itself. That's why people often say, it just keeps happening to me. Like, this keeps happening to me. If you find yourself saying this keeps happening to me, I almost guarantee that it's because you are blaming your emotions to other people. You're not learning from them, because if you did, it wouldn't keep happening to you. Okay? So asking for help from yourself is that invitation back home to you. Every negative emotion invites you to explore an unmet need. Okay? The third practice is share personal stories. The practice was share personal stories with others. I want you to share personal stories with yourself. These are your learnings. Too many of us discount our stories. My whole book, No One's Coming to Save You, is all about all of the stories that I dismissed, that I discounted. The very experience of me, I discounted because I always felt like other people had more important stories to tell. They were a cancer survivor. They came from a verbally and physically abusive family. They were raped. They were attacked. They were abandoned. They had a brother that was mentally handicapped. They had a sister that struggled because she had to take care of her sister, me, and her brother because Our dad left. What did I have to complain about? What story did I have to share? The story that I had to share was the story of me that I needed to honor and share with myself. And that my book is the invitation for you to do that for you. I'm not suggesting you have to write a book about it. I'm just asking you to get real and to validate your own experience within this life. You didn't have to have the hardest life ever to know that you've endured enough, that you've been through enough, that you deserve joy and happiness and fulfillment and love. And know that because that might be something that you want, that might be something that you desire, that it doesn't take away from anybody else that might have in your mind worse hardship or a more life of struggle, right? I want you to share your personal stories with yourself. These are your learnings. I also want you to give and receive feedback to yourself. The practice was to give and receive feedback from others. I want you to give and receive feedback for and to yourself. This is how you grow. If we're not asking ourselves on the regular, how can I show up better for myself and the world tomorrow? How might I have handled that conversation differently, better? How might I have been more prepared for this or for that? Because here's what I know. The value that you bring forward today is expired tomorrow. Every day is an opportunity to bring a different level of value, to bring a different level of brilliance, of magic, of love, of joy, of abundance, whatever it is that you bring to the world so brilliantly. You got to know what that is first. And then I want you to challenge yourself to give yourself feedback as to whether or not you know you're doing it to the extent that you know is possible for you. Again, that is how you grow. And the last practice was to practice empathy for yourself. The practice, again, was to practice empathy for others. And again, I'm all about doing this for other people, 1,000%. But you just cannot do it for others to the extent that you can do it for yourself. And I resisted that, friends. I resisted it because people would tell me, Leah, you can't possibly love others until you love yourself. And I was like, they don't know what they're talking about. I have tremendous love for everyone. I just struggle with love for myself. They are wrong about that. They're wrong about that. I know how much I love my family. I know how much I love my kids. I know how much I love my husband and my mom and all of the people of the world. I know how much I love them. I don't have to love me to love them in that way. I did not believe that. Okay? So if you are sitting in the same camp that I was, not believing in that, this is what I wish somebody would have told me. So I didn't waste 5-10 years of my life navigating to self-love, because I'll tell you, they were right. They were 1,000% right. You can love them, but the love feels different. It feels incomplete. It's as incomplete as the love that you have for yourself. When you can tap into a love for you and you can give it to the world freely, you don't need any validation. You don't need any external appreciation, although it's lovely. You don't need it because you are giving yourself that gift with the love that you are. So what I wish somebody would have told me is that you can reject, of course, you can reject everything that I say. You can reject it as true. You can reject it as wrong. You can reject it as right, whatever. But the question is, could any of this conversation be useful? Could it be useful? If someone would have said, Leah, you don't have to believe me. You can continue to think that you can love them however it is that you think you're loving them and refuse to love yourself. That's okay. But would it be useful? Could it be useful if you thought I could be right about that? Could it be useful to just see what loving yourself looks like? Because wouldn't it be really cool if in that instance you proved yourself wrong? That could be cool. So when you practice empathy for yourself, it looks like you being curious. It looks like you being compassionate. It looks like talking to yourself like you would a friend. Okay? That's what it looks like. So I want to walk you through what this looks like with a real example with real situations. So if we look at the conflict that some of us that are listening to this podcast, me, who will always and forever be my client, right? We have conflict with team members, okay? So we believe that the problem is the team member. That's what we believe to be true. If we were to be vulnerable with ourselves and do those things, do the practice, we would realize that the symptom, right, is these persistent conflicts or disagreements with team members, right? False vulnerability in this instance looks like sharing our thoughts. Thoughts are different than truth. Sharing our thoughts, not our truth with our team, which will most likely be mean. It will look like us disagreeing with our team members. It will look like us needing to prove ourselves right with our team members. And that will only make the situation worse. That will only make the situation worse. And then we wonder and we ponder as to why nothing works, why nothing changes. Okay? True vulnerability in this, practicing this vulnerability is not projecting our thoughts and feelings onto team members. Instead of immediately blaming them or the situation, we pause, we reflect, we ask ourselves some questions with curiosity, and we hold space for the answer. Why is this conflict affecting me so much and so strongly? What personal expectations or insecurities might be contributing to my reaction? Am I projecting any of my own unmet needs onto this situation? I'm going to suggest yes. I'm going to suggest yes. And that situation will continue to repeat itself until you sit with yourself and you identify what is the unmet need. What is the root cause? And the root cause in this particular situation may be related to the leader's own need for control, their fear of being undermined, or maybe it's unresolved personal issues that are being projected onto the team dynamic. I don't know what they are for you, but you have to know what they are for you. That becomes your truth. That becomes your truth. Let me give you another example. Decision making, right? We think the symptom, right? We think the problem is that we have difficulty making decisions, which leads to indecisiveness or procrastination. The false vulnerability that is revealed then would be for us to blame others on why decisions are not being met, right? Thoughts of that a decision could be wrong or it could be right. And it might also reveal a reflection of like past regrets and worries. And none of this is true. This is all just in thought land. True vulnerability, rather than attributing this struggle to the external pressure that we have to make a right or a wrong decision, or somehow a lack of information, we could explore our own internal states with questions. What fears or anxieties are preventing me from making a decision? Am I worried about a potential failure, or am I worried about judgment from others? Do I lack confidence in my own ability of judgment? The real problem here is always our unwillingness to go inward. The root problem is always tapping into the truth that lies within. It might be our feel of failure. It might be our lack of self-trust. It might be our need for perfectionism, right? All of which then, as you can imagine, can hinder the decision-making process. Okay? So there are so many examples of this, like maybe where you're having low morale, low motivation. You're having a hard time getting your employees to do the very thing, to honor the vision that you've set foot and set forward. Okay? In all of these situations, leaders are invited to differentiate always between the symptoms that they are experiencing and the underlying root cause. The root cause is never outside of ourselves. So by reflecting inward, we address the core issues. We get at the heart of what's going on. We create efficiencies because we're not spending time and resources trying to solve the problem the same way and effectively. We are creating a more harmonious and productive environment for themselves, their teams, and ourselves, one that is in congruency and in alignment. This work is so important, friends. By shifting our focus from external validation to internal exploration, we get to reflect on our truth self, our values, and our inner experiences without the need for external approval, right? By thinking and considering, could it be useful that every single emotion that I have is just an unmet need that only we can meet, by the way? Understanding that, being open to considering the possibility of that being useful, frees us from needing anyone outside of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we don't ask for help or support. That's not what this means. What it means is that you will be asking for the right support, the right help from the right people. Without doing this work, we will blame the situation as to why it is that we feel the way that we do. We will become incredibly bitter and resentful that they are not supporting us in the way that we think we should. And then we belabor the blame, when even in their efforts, it's not enough, because it will never be enough. It can't be enough. Because not because there's anything wrong with them. Rather, they can't be your solve. Most problems are emotional. Knowing this, no amount of logic, no amount of efforting, no amount of external validation is going to remedy the pain, is going to remedy the suffering, or is going to remedy the struggle. The only thing that will is you sitting with yourself and honoring these 5 vulnerability practices. I promise you, if you do the work of doing those 5 vulnerability practices with yourself, you will transform yourself and every single relationship that you have. I hope that you choose to do this work for you. You always know on the other side of this work, I'm here to support you, to coach you, to cheerlead you, to challenge you, to call you up, always. But it's got to start with you, and I hope you choose you today. Have a beautiful one, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rowling, where I share big ideas to inspire, impact, and influence your life. Tune in every Friday at 11 Central on transformationtalkradio.com for your morning cup of coffee, the hug you never want to end, and that inspirational message that you felt was written just for you. Each show is inspiring you to become you with purpose and intention. For more information or to connect with me, visit www.leahrowling.com.